Okay, today we have to talk about some of the threats to user-generated content on the web and in some of your favorite social media sites and even on hosted sites that have been accumulating. And you've probably heard of these individually, and you've probably been asked to call your senators and donate money to organizations that are fighting these one at a time. And the problem is you've got to think about all of them together rather than just support an organization that fights only one of them at a time. Most of you probably, for example, net neutrality was the best known thing because when Trump got elected, as you know, AgitPi, eventually, through a procedure, they voted away Obama's net neutrality protections. But we haven't seen any real consequences of it other than some very specialized instances where there have been some slowdowns of emergency services, which is serious, that shouldn't have happened, and where there have been some unusual cases of maybe throttling or specialized channels, but that the net neutrality problem has not caused problems for websites, for ordinary websites that we've noticed very much since it went away in June of 2018. But there are a lot of other problems that are more serious, and we'll go through some of them, and they kind of interreact a lot. You probably all heard about the FOSTA law, Fight Online Sex Trafficking, which essentially made social media sites and even web hosts liable for users if the circumstances were such that the websites should have known or the host should have known that prostitution was being sold or that sex trafficking was being facilitated on the sites. The technicalities of the law are quite complicated, and there were a lot of language changes at the last minute that made it worse. But as a result, many sites got rid of some services like dating and personals, and maybe 50 to 100 well-known sites have been affected. I haven't been affected particularly just because I discussed LGBT issues on one of my blogs or anything. I haven't been directly affected, and I haven't been told anything. Most web hosting companies have added sex trafficking to the things that are forbidden, on their AU, in their acceptable use policies, like a lot of other things are already forbidden. Not just child pornography, but things like running online pharmacies is typically forbidden, and selling weapons is typically forbidden, and facilitating terrorism is forbidden also. And that's going to get a little bit tricky. We're going to come back to that last point in a minute. But the FOSTA law was a significant narrowing of the protections of social media hosts and of normal web hosting companies for what their users do. They have to be a little more wary of the possibility of liability, and so some things have been shut down, at least by some social media sites and by some ad sites like Craigslist. Some things have been shut down as a result. Then the next big thing probably is what's been going on in Europe with the European Union Copyright Directive, which contained two particularly provocative articles called 11 and 13, and I think now they're 15 and 17. I think they were renumbered. They went through several different votes and stages, and then just yesterday, the 19 of the 28 member countries in the EU ratified the new directive, and some of the provisions will go into effect in some of the larger countries like France, maybe this summer. Even the UK, which is trying to leave with Brexit, may be affected. What we think will happen, it's a little hard to say. It's almost certain that you know, there's talk over whether, for example, YouTube and other video companies can filter everything before it goes up. The reason that's significant is that in Europe now, the social media company, and I presume a web hosting platform also, is now considered a publisher and not simply a utility. And so the web hosting company will be held, or the social media company like Facebook will be held responsible if a video that infringes on a copyright is uploaded and if the rights holder wants to go after them. So in practice, they would have to secure the rights from the rights holder for a movie or a music song or anything like that, even a classical music composition performance. If it's not, if they would have a hard time knowing in advance if something's going to be infringing. They wouldn't. YouTube now filters things called content ID. Most of the time that catches things after the fact. I think it is true that when you upload a video and it's processing before it's published, that it's actually going through content ID. So I think there is some filtering going on now for known copyright infringement. So there may be some partial solution, but it would be impossible for them to guarantee that a copyrighted item never gets uploaded. There has been talk of several different